A very good evening to all. On behalf of Uriel Kids, let me extend a warm welcome to all of you to the episode of Joy of Parenting webinar, episode number 12. These webinars are our earnest attempt to bring forward experts in many fields related to children, their health, and education. So, today in our webinar, we have with us Mr. Hakimuddin Habibullah, who is an Indian former swimmer who specialized in middle distance freestyle events. He represented India at the 2000 Summer Olympics at Sydney, Australia. He is an engineer too and comes with over 25 years of experience in Indian sporting domain as an athlete and beyond. He is also the managing director of Maratha Pools India Private Limited and a founder and a director of Winning Matters Consulting Private Limited. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Yes, likewise, sir. And I am Ramya Chandrasekhar. I am center head at Angels Parrot Academy, preschool and daycare, and I'm also the content for Uriel Kids Online. So before starting this webinar, it is my privilege to introduce to you Uriel Kids Online. Let me take you through the concept behind Uriel Kids through this short video. All right, so Uriel Kids is India's first 24 by 7 online preschool where we are passionate about educating young minds to help them explore the world of knowledge and curiosity. Your child can learn anywhere, anytime. Uriel Kids covers a broad spectrum of subjects like phonics, general awareness, mathematics, English, etc., which will ensure all round and holistic learning and development of your child. The courses have been designed by the team of educationists with decades of global experience, and there will be live classes as well. So without much ado, let us start this webinar with Mr. Hakimuddin. A very warm welcome once again, sir.
Thank you. And again, as I said, it's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Yes. So, my first question, please, if you could tell us more about your life, your background, and your first tries with swimming. How did you fall in love with swimming?
Well, like I often say, my life has been a series of fortunate accidents. And I'll just share a few slides that I've had put together. And if is this visible? Just check.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So my tryst with swimming was, like I said, an accident. In many ways, it was one. When I was in preschool, I'm told by my parents that there was one of my classmates landed up drowning trying to retrieve a ball. And my parents, in their limited understanding at that point, assumed that if I knew how to swim, I would be safe in water. So that's how, that was one part of it. I'm also told that I was a very naughty kid. I had a lot of energy, and I guess a lot of parents can relate to that. So they felt like if I was exposed to a sport, and swimming was something that, again, it kind of, when they introduced me to the water to help me be safer in and around water, with that being the starting point. And then they found that when I went in and swam, I would come home and ask for food rather than being chased around the house to eat, and I would go to sleep very easily. So I was very calm. So swimming was something, that then, they realized I enjoyed the water. I enjoyed it. I played around. Though my introduction to the water happened a bit late in any structured form. So till then it was more unstructured, fun play, splashing around. And it was only around at the age of 6 that I was introduced, because as I joined the water, and informally, I was just acquiring a lot of skills. They thought it would be good for me to go through a structured, through a Learn to Swim program. I can't say it was structured per se, but it was at least an attempt to introduce me to the strokes. And that's where at the age of 6, was my formal introduction to the water, to just learn
Wow.
the strokes, which in the scheme of things is a little late. At the age of 8, for example, was when I went on to my first ever nationals. So I represented the state at my first nationals when I was 8 years old. At 10 was when I won my first national age group medal. And so at 8, I made the finals, but I finished last in the finals, which is 8 out of 8. At 10, I won my first age group medal. At 12, I won my first age group gold medal. At the age of 13, multiple things came together. Yeah, it was a combination of me making it to the Indian age group team as well as the Indian senior team. And because on the virtue of making it as part of the Indian senior team, I was the youngest on the Indian senior team. I also got employed by the Border Security Force as a sub inspector. So I turned professional at the age of 13. Many might be curious how that happened, but honestly, when I look back, even I wonder. But I was taken purely for my sport, and I turned professional at the age of 13 while I was still in school. And so on. 15 was when 15 and 17 were critical milestones that intersected with my 10th and 12th standard education. Many challenging decisions around how to manage the two. And 20 was when I kept on with my sport while balancing my academics. And at 20 was when I eventually went to the Olympics and represented India there while I was in my the Olympics clashed with my 6 semester exams of my engineering.
Okay.
So this is just a very brief glimpse of just a few things that of where I came from. And typically for those who might be curious, swimmers tend to be pretty big in size. There's Ian Thorpe, who's was well known for his foot size. He was 6'5" or around 6'5", 6'6" in height, and his foot size was, even for his height, was stood out. I think it was around 17 or 18. You can see his feet in the picture. And you have someone like Michael Phelps, that again is a legend in our sport. So for those who've not met me, and I really wish that I could have done this session in person with all of you, but I'm 5 feet 6 inches tall, so I'm not a
Wow.
giant.
You kind of defied the,
Well, I think I did
the
well for my height, but just to put things in context, because we do things with our limited understanding and in the environment we are in, but when you have to also benchmark at the world standards, then
right.
then you need to have some context to that. So
Right.
just putting it in context with my sports. So these were the legends. Like this is a photo with one of the swimmers, one of the very very prominent swimmers in the world called Anthony Irwin. He's known for being the youngest and the oldest gold medal winner in the 50-meter freestyle. He won the gold when I was at the Sydney Games. He was 19 years old then. and then he gave up the sport pretty much for many years, and then came back, made the finals in the 2012 Olympics, and then went on to win gold at the 2016 Olympics after a gap of 16 years, something which is not usual. And but you can see the height difference as an example,
Yeah.
um, in context. So this is just something to give a physical perspective to the sport that I do, and I often joke, that there's only that much you can whip a donkey to become a racehorse, But and it's a question that I know many parents may have subsequent to this, and will be happy to answer.
Right.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, so I'd probably run through the other slides at a subsequent time,
Right.
you know, as we get through the different sets of questions.
Sure. Definitely. So, yeah, your parents, I mean, they worked out a perfect win-win situation for both of you. I mean, they harnessed your abundant energy and then they harnessed it in the right way and then they could get the best out of you. So, yeah.
Yes, yes, I think that's something that worked out. I don't think it was necessarily planned that way, because both my parents did not come in with any sort of sporting background or experience, but it was just a chance, like I said, and
Yeah.
it turned out to work.
Okay. Very nice to hear. And so the next question to you is, at what age do you think a parent should encourage their child to learn swimming?
See, when it comes to swimming, well, swimming is a special sport. Now, the reason I say that, it's the only sport that someone can do literally from birth to death. For those who may not be aware what I'm talking about, at birth, the baby is already in a water-based medium. And
Mm-hmm.
hence, when even today, when there are water births, for example, the baby is born in the water and is very comfortable. And
Absolutely.
babies have a natural ability not to gag and not to swallow water. So you'll find right from newborn children to very young children, even in the first few months, they're very comfortable. And so the introduction to water should never stop. It's literally when they,
Mm-hmm.
from the time they're born, they are comfortable and ready to be in the water, and hence there's no right age. I mean, you can start literally from birth to introduce
Right.
them to the water. It's just that when it's the initial years, the initial months in the beginning, and then the initial years, there's a lot more attention on making sure that the environment is made safe and comfortable, for them. So the hygiene of the water, the temperature of the water, those are very important to make sure that they are safe and comfortable. And then and it's also from a skill-based thing. It's more about familiarization with water. So often in many more mature countries, where swimming is well understood, uh, children are introduced to the water at a very, very young age, at
Yeah.
less than 6 months of age, and it's usually as a parent-child combination.
Mm-hmm.
And often the swim school per se that does any sort of formal introduction to the water becomes usually the first learning space for the child, even before a preschool or a Montessori or anything else comes into play. So in many of the mature countries, a swim school is often considered to be the first learning space for a child, where they're
Right.
introduced to numbers and colors and everything as part of
Everything.
various activities
Absolutely.
with the parent.
Right. So I think, yeah, I mean, they can start swimming as early as 6 months old, and then they can do it. And I think it's a very low impact sport, so I think they can even do it as they age also. I mean,
Absolutely.
age
and
is
and
not a bar.
and hence, like I was mentioning, at the other end of the spectrum, you have people. I've known people who are well into their 80s, 90s, who can swim faster than they can walk, because like you correctly pointed out, it's because of the buoyancy of the water, they are able to propel themselves more easily and more comfortable than many of them are on land. They might
Right.
struggle due to
Right. Hmm.
impact and gravity.
Right. So it's one of the best form of exercise to pursue,
it's a,
even for
it's a
an
best
adult
form
and
of
an age.
Yes, it's definitely a fantastic activity to just stay fit and healthy.
Okay. Okay. I'm just curious because I think you would have, when you were like 8 years old, it was what, the 80s, probably 80s.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
did
late
you
80s.
even have access to good swimming pools then? Because now in these days, I find swimming pools in every society, but I think it would have been a bit difficult during those times, right? Because, yeah, in the 80s, not much swimming pools and clubs available. So,
Yeah,
how?
so just to put things in context again, we didn't come from a very wealthy background, or we didn't have like access to a club per se. So it required again a lot of extra efforts from my parents to give me the opportunity and access, and we had a few public pools. In Bangalore, that
Okay.
way, where I'm from, where I'm born and brought up, Bangalore, that way, has plenty of public pools.
Absolutely. Right.
Actually, more recently, when I say recently, in the last 15 years, I've been aware that Bangalore as a city, in isolation, probably had more 50-meter public pools than the whole of England, for example. you know
Wow.
so often, yes, I mean, do we need more for the kind of population we have? Do we need better quality infrastructure? Absolutely. But at the basic level, we did have some starting points. But
Mm-hmm.
but again, because it was public, it meant that people needed to be comfortable going to a public facility and using it.
Right.
So that's where I was introduced to it, and there was access to it. And it's only gotten better now. The access has
Oh,
definitely gotten better.
absolutely. Very true. Yes. All right. Thank you, sir. And the next question is, making sports as a career is something that parents are hesitant to do. So what would you tell to such parents who have that hesitation to make that as a career for their children?
See, for me, it depends how we want to define a career. Now, um, one is to look at it as an athlete, as a professional athlete. Now, that for me is not for everybody. I got lucky. I was good in a very poor environment. So, when in a very poor competitive environment, the Indian sporting ecosystem is still in the early development stage. So,
Right.
so in the ecosystem we had, I was the best at that point of time, and hence got the opportunities I got. But as it's getting better and things are improving, it's getting more and more challenging. It's not as easy to turn professional or to make a career in the sport. And sport,
Mm-hmm.
as an on an athlete perspective, it comes with a lot of challenges and risk. Whether it's injury or um, whether you get selected or not. Peaking at the right time. There are lots of
Yeah.
details that the chances that of failing at the higher levels are more than achieving,
Mm-hmm.
because there are only few slots available for the top.
Right. Right.
So from that angle, making a career as an athlete, and then it depends what kind of sport you play, because not all sports have an economy around it. So not if you're playing certain sports like tennis or badminton or golf, they may have certain economies, but again, the investments are also high. Then there are other sports like swimming, for example, which I did, which virtually has no money in it. You really have to be motivated to get a piece of metal, and that being and pushing yourself to a stop clock, and being happy to keep achieving better outcomes. But economically, it doesn't reward you as much to
Okay.
make it as a
Mm-hmm.
career. So keeping that in mind, I would say making a career as an athlete is always a bit of a dicey situation. Things in terms of support have gotten much better in the recent past. So you've got better support from government. Once you reach a certain stage, you've got better support from many prominent sporting organizations or NGOs that are also coming into play to support slightly younger talent. But more of the support comes as you become more visible, and you show the potential and talent to
Right. Right.
reach higher results. But otherwise, while the ecosystem is still getting better, making a career purely as an athlete is still meant only for a very, very small group of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And hence, I would not, upfront tell that, sport as an athlete is something that you can just go blindly and, just and look at making a career from that. That being said, I feel in India the logic of playing sport has been very limited or very poorly understood. So we either play sport to win medals and make a career, or we don't play sport at all.
At all. Absolutely.
It's extremes. Now,
Mm-hmm.
what we I've been encouraging, and me and my peer group have been encouraging, is people should play for life. People should be physically active. Which is, when I say physically active, a lot of our grandparents or our parents, for example, were very physically active people. They moved around, whether it was due to circumstance, mostly due to circumstances, but they physically moved a lot. They did a lot of work at home and even outside, where they had to move and move their body and move their muscles. So even though they may not have played sport in any structured manner, they were still very physically active and strong.
Yeah.
Now those fundamentals have been compromised in the recent past, and now so we have that as one of our bigger challenges at this stage. And then you have so for me, allowing children to be physically active is a most important priority. And then being able to choose and enjoy playing multiple sports, if not one single sport, is something that is great. And a lot of attention
Okay.
is required towards, both from municipal and state, or governmental organization perspective. How do you create more access, for people to
Yeah.
play sport? And then, of course, for those who may want to pursue it, like I said, there might be, there are pathways to then take them to the next level. But if people are being active and they enjoy playing sport, then there are many other avenues to make a career.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you could today, there are many supporting roles that have opened up. So you could, right from a physiologist, a psychologist, a strength and conditioning trainer. You could be a coach. You can be a teacher of the sport. You could be you could maintain the facility at the ground level. There's you could be so for me, the career in sport, there are many. It's like, if you enjoy, for example, if you enjoy tourism, you can you can
Mm-hmm.
you can club it with sport and do sport tourism.
Yes.
If you enjoy law, you can specialize in law and then do an additional specialization on sports and do sports law. So and similar with medicine. So for me, the career pathways are multiple and growing. It's about taking whatever stream you enjoy doing, and then seeing its connect with sport.
Right. Completely makes sense. Thank you so much. And over to the next question. How does playing a sport impact the academic performance of a child? Can you elaborate on the life skills that can be learned through sports?
So, while you introduced me, I did my engineering in parallel, with
Mm-hmm.
my sport at the highest level. Was it difficult and challenging? The answer is yes. It was challenging. But that being said, was it impossible? No. So I do remember situations where I was told that you had to make a choice between playing sport or following doing your academics, and that doing both would not be possible. I can say quite confidently, that it is possible, not only because I did it, but I was also in company of some very, of other uh, peers that also similarly achieved that balance between sport and academics. And in fact, what we found is that you enjoy, uh, or if you enjoy your sport, and if you're doing that, it takes away a lot of your excess energy that sometimes we often, struggle
Yes.
with, because everyone has excess energy. So if a child is given a book in their hand and asked to study for 2 hours, effectively they might study for 15 or 20 minutes. For the
Yes.
remaining 1.5 hours, they're fidgeting around, they're distracted, they may just be sitting in the room because they're forced to sit in a room. So what happens is, what we found, all of us, is that when we played sport, we probably played sport. I mean, just to give the context of those 2 hours as a reference, we probably spent, that 1.5 hours playing sport, and burned our energies, so that
Mm-hmm.
when we came and sat in front of our books we didn't have that restless energy, and we were then able to just get to, so even if we had half an hour, we were able to, or 20 minutes, we were able to do as much as another child who sat in the room for 2 hours. We were
Right.
able to do as much or better at times, because we were able to absorb more and probably paid more attention because we knew we had less time and we had to just focus on what we had to pick.
Right.
So that being said, I've seen that given the opportunities, um, children are able to adapt and are able to find a good balance between handling their academics well while they play sport at the top levels.
Mm-hmm.
We often make a mistake where we try to give concessions to children because they're playing sport. So often I find, there is this thing of saying, when I say concession, I mean concession in the quality of education
Mm-hmm.
to balance sport. And something that I strongly believe is um, the quality of education should never be compromised. The quality of education, it may be modified or adapted to support an athlete, but should never be compromised. It's not good to probably say that getting 50% marks is okay,
Yeah.
just so that it's a cutoff to get a seat in some in engineering or medicine, or to get into a college. That lowering of the benchmark, I feel, is where the compromise begins, and
Mm-hmm.
then it's a slippery slope.
Right. Okay. So I've also heard that sports also increases the feel-good hormones in people, in a child or maybe adult. So maybe that will accelerate their learning process also,
See, that
probably.
that will accelerate, and Ramya, for me, there's a lot of different angles that I do look at as well, because I did my engineering, for example, literally carrying my books in a suitcase and traveling around the world while I competed for India. And um, and I realized, and I was in the top 5% of my class.
Mm-hmm.
Now that being said, like I said, one is the focus and ability, but beyond that, I realize that it challenges you to think for yourself and
Right.
and learn by yourself the concepts, because otherwise, often we are victims to what was given to us by the teacher, and then
Yes.
we're not able to adapt or think for ourselves, and hence I feel that's one part of it. At a
Mm-hmm.
more basic level, I feel a very big part of education that has been missing is the physical part of it. What I mean by physical part of it is, today in most conventional schools you have the traditional subjects which are prioritized, and then you have the physical education, which is a stepchild
Yes.
and is typically executed by somebody with poor education background,
True.
and
Very
and
true.
um, and what I've seen in certain other countries being relooked at is, how do you get the math and science teachers, for example, onto the playing field?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the math
Mm-hmm.
and science teachers on the playing field, so that the playing field is an extension of the classroom? So you're literally doing your math and science, and your on the playing field. So you're learning the subjects, and similarly, when you're going abroad, you're seeing, so whether it's geography, history, everything. I mean, sport. Whether you're are doing it in your own school or in your own city, or whether you then go to the transcend to the next level where you're competing. And even when I traveled within my own country, within India, you learned a lot about the culture, about the spaces. Uh, while I was growing up, I think one of the good things was that we had to travel everywhere by bus or train. Flights were limited,
Right.
so you had the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to look out of the window and see things firsthand.
Right.
So what you saw
Right.
in the textbook of in geography, for example, you could look out in the thing and actually see, what was growing outside the window while you went around the
Mm-hmm.
country. While today we lose all of that because we are flying and we don't have context of
Yes.
the
Yes.
geography we are in. So sport, and I feel at least we were lucky, and I feel still the opportunities exist if we can go back to some basics, where sport and the opportunities that sport opens up can create many additional learnings. So when I passed out of college, for example, at the age of 21, I had a far stronger foundation than many
Okay.
of my other classmates or peer groups. Many of them were otherwise, were very raw to the realities of the world.
Mm-hmm.
because they're all safeguarded from a bubble around their family. And at the age of 21, they were for the first time entering the unknown workspace, while I had probably real life exposure, you know, right from
Yes.
the age of 13, if not earlier, to many realities of life. So when I entered the
Yes.
workforce at the age of 21, I was at a very different starting point, and had a different level of maturity when I entered.
You could deal with success and failure, pretty,
Oh,
you could
absolutely.
balance both of them pretty well.
Absolutely, and everything, including the what people often complain about, saying the inequalities or the politics of different things. I mean, you're exposed to the politics, very early when it comes to sport, and you know how to manage it. It's slightly different in sport because it's merit based, and you're able to um, you know. Um, yeah, you're able to then better handle these situations.
All
But
right.
but talking about some of the learnings of sport, I mean just some of uh, these were some of the, I'm just sharing the slide of where these were certain things that are summed up, that helped me um, get to where I did, towards getting to the Olympics, where I had to really, even from my balancing my work and I mean my education and my swimming, it was about
Mm-hmm.
having to work smarter, having to dig in for many years, where it's not an overnight thing. You have to do it and build, focusing on details that can give advantages, compared to competition. Um,
Right.
how do you commit, where otherwise often everyone's just trying to put up a good show when somebody's looking at them, and then slack off and nobody's not, so it's how do you patience and perseverance, then focusing on the strengths, having the right balance of attitude to get to places,
Right.
preparation. Some of these are the key points that helped me get to this. Like the 10,000 hours. I was just trying to give context to the kind of distances we had to cover.
Mm-hmm.
For I probably swum around the world, more than once to, um,
Wow.
for the kind of distances we would train every day, and then to
Amazing.
eventually get here. So, to eventually get to the Olympics. And then, of course, dealing with the outcomes subsequently, which is where, like I said, at the age of 21, when I'd finished my engineering and, been to the Olympics, you kind of learn some of these key points of saying, okay, one of the key things is success and failure, right? I mean, when how do you balance that? Because neither is permanent. And, you have to take both in your stride.
Right.
Um, yeah, so these were some of these key learnings that
Yeah, these are I mean, you have a whole set of life lessons that you could learn out of sports. I mean, it is very well elaborated through these slides and what you said. So many life lessons to learn from when you're pursuing sports. Nice. And over to the next question, sir. How can I help my child to select the sport that he or she wants to? I mean, how do I know which sport is the child interested in?
so so this is a tough question. I mean, when I say tough question, it's because I'm aware that in the Indian context we still have significant limitations of exposure to a child. So what I would often encourage is keeping things simple. It's important that the child is given at least the access to the basic
Mm-hmm.
physical opportunities. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, how do you facilitate running-based sports?
Right.
Now that helps in building land-based endurance. Strengthens your legs, strengthens your core movement. So whether it's running in the sense of literally running, sport, athletics, or it could be, for example, sports like football, anything that demands hockey, or anything that demands you to run, and really develop, cycling for that matter, develop strong legs. But running being more than cycling, let me put it that way, just
Mm-hmm.
running, keeping things simple, allowing for movement. As a kid, I used to run a lot, actually, even before I chose to get to focus on swimming. Something that again accidentally got involved with, because my coach and my team were kind of encouraging it, was triathlon. So I would swim, cycle, and run. You know,
Oh, wow.
and I think these again set a very strong physical foundation for me. And eventually, then I could choose what I wanted, and I eventually chose um, to focus on swimming.
We
But
can kind of identify what passion in what sport the child is more passionate about, right? And
yeah, see, I think passion, whether they're passionate or not, I think that's often a tricky balance, because you have in India, we still have a I mean, we have, one is the constraint of access. So you'll end up liking what you may be exposed to, or you may be exposed to something and you don't like it, and it becomes, then people assume that that itself is a binary.
right, right.
The second challenge is that even within a sport, let's take swimming as an example, right? I mean, even within a sport, everyone goes through phases. Let's take child in education, right? I mean, a few days the child will hate a subject, and
Mm-hmm.
a few days later they might love the subject. It all depends on how they are taught, and then how do we make sure that the joy of learning is the key to the process, and
Right.
the outcome is not defining what they like. So often
Mm-hmm.
the challenge we have is how to not get carried away by success very early. So we often, as parents or even as educators, I find that if a child is doing well or showing some promise in math, for example, in the beginning, they say, oh, you're going to be a genius in math for life, and that often is not
Yeah.
true. I mean, or it could, and so they might like the initial numbers, and as it gets more complex they may lose interest, or vice versa, and so it's very important to be able to create the joy of learning through the process.
Mm-hmm. True.
And hence, it's not about, at the first instance as a child says I'm not enjoying it or I don't like it, that the parent also pulls them off or says, okay, now this is the end of the road.
Right.
So that's why there's a dualistic challenge that we do have in our environment, to the extent possible. And it's, things are simple, I would say, let kids play multiple sports. So I was saying land based is one, water based is another. Swimming is an essential life skill, and it's something that gives
Mm-hmm.
a lot of fundamental, triggers the whole body. So to give context, um, swimming is the only sport that activates the largest organ of the body, right? So the largest organ of the body is the skin, and the skin has all your nerve centers. So the minute you are introduced to the water, you activate your brain completely. And that's why swimming is
Okay.
one of those sports that literally from your head to toe you need to be,
It
everything needs
activates
to,
your
yeah,
senses.
everything
Yeah.
needs to work. Otherwise, you could, some it can mess up the balance.
Right. Very
So
well said, sir.
so swimming is one which brings in a whole lot of other benefits of health,
Mm-hmm.
recreation, leisure, rehab, all of that as at a basic level. And then of course, I mean, even if someone wants to enjoy swimming and wants to continue to do it more, that's a different set of opportunities it opens up. But land-based running, water-based swimming is a second, and then things around flexibility, and so gymnastics, or yoga. These are things that are good to do. Now, many of these today, the barriers of entry or access are becoming lower, and these would
Mm-hmm.
be the three foundational ones that I would encourage people to look at doing to build their foundation. Once the
Right.
foundations are there, then even after the age of 13 or 14, kids can go on to then choose a sport or specialize in a sport. But if their foundations are strong, in these sports, they can go ahead and do many others at a competitive level, even if they start at that slightly later age.
All right.
Because one of the
Perfect.
fundamentals that I again want people to be paying attention to, and I feel in India often gets missed out. See, because majority of the parents, let's be fair, right? Majority of the parents, starting with my parents to even today's parents, many of them, they're all first generation. I mean, they are parents to first generation learners in the sporting
Mm-hmm.
space,
Yeah.
because many of them themselves have no clue. So it's almost trying to equate today's urban parents, when it comes to sport, to that of a parent in a village, whose child is going to a school for the first time.
True.
So that's the kind of context. We are still at an early stage, because many parents have themselves never played sport at a very high level to even understand
Right.
what should be the path.
Right. Right. I think at this point, I think a school will play a very vital role in identifying and providing the platform to children, is what I think. Right. I mean,
Schools do
what is
play,
your thought?
yes, absolutely. I think schools play a very, very important role, and schools at different stages. So whether it's a preschool, or whether it's a primary school or a secondary school, or right up to university for that matter, the whole education pathway has different roles to play towards creating the right environment for
Mm-hmm.
physical activity to um, for kids to be physically active, and then to be able to create the pathways if someone is showing promise. The school may not have all the facilities for high performance, but but at least then the pathways, at least the fundamentals are in place for a child to love or enjoy physical activity. And then
Right.
if they, depends on the facilities, because I know at some point the right to education, for example, tried to push that every school needed to have a certain minimum physical, I mean, space for physical instruction. But that could be a constraint. At the same time, I feel like there is a need for schools. If not, if even if they don't have it, they don't have the space. At least they have to tie up with spaces,
That's some.
either
Right.
private or public spaces, so that they are better utilized during the day. They are usually low. There's low utilization when it coincides with school times. So it's a fantastic opportunity to map the two. That's what happens in other parts of the world. Um, so even if the school doesn't have their own infrastructure, they can help in maximizing what's available around them,
Mm-hmm.
and create the opportunities of at least elementary access, but good
Right.
quality elementary access. That's key, because so far, like I said, what has been happening in many schools is the physical education part has often been compromised, both in the quality of the resources that they bring on board, and then the quality of the instruction that happens subsequently. So
Right.
many of the kids at some point, children start losing interest because it's not taught to them in an interesting way. They don't really enjoy it. um,
Right.
and these are things that, and like I said, that's why it's important to look at it as an extension of the classroom.
Right. All right. So before I go to my next question, I'll try and sneak in some questions that the audience have asked. Um, the first question being, what behavior of parent is expected? Should they force their children into some kind of sport? Because as a child, I don't think they have that ability to go into it. So should they be forced on them initially?
So what I was so sorry, I missed a point. What I was trying to make a bit earlier was, we tend to, because the kids have um, low physical activity, their fitness levels are low. So to go back to elementary focus, you have to be fit to play sport. So often in our limited understanding, we'll end up focusing on playing sport to stay fit.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that differentiation is clear, because
Yes. Yes.
you need to be fit to play sport. And often if you're not fit to play sport, then you can get injured and everything else can happen. But if you are, I mean, so you need to be fit to play sport rather than play sport to be fit. So
Mm-hmm.
otherwise, people say, okay, just on the weekend, I went and played cricket, or I went and played this, and so I'm fit. That's not right. So fitness is something that you have to do continuously over a long time. Now, um, I'm sorry. Can you repeat your question again? I just
Yes, the question is they were asking, someone is asking that what behavior is expected from a parent? Should they force their children to play a kind of sport?
Yeah. So if a child is physically fit and is enjoying physical activity, one is for them to be able to be exposed to different sports. Now, the definition of force is something which I feel is a very Indian thing, because
Mhm.
we don't create the environment to make it attractive for the child to want to take up a sport and stay in the sport, which often then becomes a parent's push to get somebody. So to give an example, we see this very common in swimming. That's what we are trying to change in the work we're doing. But in India, it's the parent that needs to drag the child to the pool and feels like they have to tick a box by taking the child to the pool and introducing them to the water. In a very short term learn to swim program. But on the flip side, when I've seen even some family members abroad, taking Australia as an example because that's where they've got a better culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in terms of formal exposure, they, in the beginning, they get half an hour once a week in terms of a formal education. The child is the one who's standing outside the door, banging the door, begging the parents to take them to the pool. The equation is completely
Right.
changed. It's the child who wants to go and enjoys it, and the parent is then pulled, or forced to enable the access.
It works the opposite way. I guess, yeah, it highly depends on the coach and the institute how
The
well they
the
motivate the
teacher,
child.
so there are multiple factors, right? I mean, it depends on the environment you create. A lot of, let's go back to fundamentals, and because we're talking from an education context, look at the space
Mm-hmm.
that is created for kids, right? I mean, in a play school, you make it colorful, you got drawings, paintings, you got lots of colorful toys for kids to play with, and that's what attracts them and wants them to come, makes them feel more comfortable to come to school. Look at any of the sporting spaces, right? Many of the sporting spaces are very drab and dry and not pretty and attractive.
Right.
So even one is, how do you make those spaces more child friendly? How do you make it more comfortable to even attract the kids' attention and say, hey, I want to go there because they play things, for me to play and do things which are more comfortable. And then of course the role of the teacher, the role of the program, all of those then definitely then take it to the next level. But first is, how do you even get a child to want to proactively come, to a space?
Right.
And introducing a very key point, because you mentioned the word coach, we realize
Mm-hmm.
that again, in India we're still at a nascent stage, and we often land up calling everybody a coach. It's like on the education space, it's like trying to call everyone a professor or a lecturer. And that's because a coach is almost equivalent to a professor lecturer.
Right.
uh,
Right.
when you're at a younger year, you need teachers, right? You need teachers, and the role of teachers is to introduce a subject and give you the holistic skills so that you enjoy those, you can enjoy the subject, and learn those skills, whether you take, I mean, as a life skill. So whether you take it professionally or not, you at least know the subject at a decent level to be able to function in life.
Right. Right.
And then if you want to pursue it professionally, that's when you go to college, university, you have the professors and lecturers who come in to help you take it to the next level with the
Mm-hmm.
so coaches are typically like professors and lecturers who once you commit to competition and want that focus and attention, you have coaches. But before that, over many years, you need teachers to teach you sport and make you enjoy the sport, giving you all the fundamental and holistic skills so that you're able to enjoy it for life,
Right.
whether you want to compete
Right.
or not.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the factors, that are important, and it's work in progress. India, as it's developing, is beginning to pay attention to it. And like I said,
Right.
even as people appreciate what is required, or look for it, things are beginning to change.
Right. I think that answered the question of another audience. How do we take out parents' fear of water in preschool level for swimming? So I guess the suggestions that you said, I think that kind of answered this question,
So,
right?
well, partly yes, but partly no, because when you're talking about preschool, see, normally when you're talking about preschool, you're talking about children who, at the age group of less than 4, or around, or below 6, So this is the rough age group that you're talking about. Now, in that, it's very important that uh, you initially expose the child along with the parent. So today, especially where we are, many of the Indian parents being themselves having had limited exposure, we normally encourage the parents to also participate in the sport.
Right.
We encourage first the parents to get their fear out of, to eliminate their fear. It's
Right.
never too late for them also to engage with the water, and take the benefits of it. So one is to get the parents to enjoy the water. and then be in the water when the child is introduced to it. So the child is introduced in a safer manner. They feel safer because when they see the parent in the water, that's makes them better. So kids, especially younger than 4 or even younger than 6 in the Indian context, it's good to start the initial set of classes with the parent and child before the parent starts moving out, and the child then can be part of an independent program.
Mm-hmm. Right. That pretty much answers that question. Thank you so much, sir. And over to the next one. Somebody wants to know how you reached the Olympics. Any guidelines for them?
Um, so to be honest, for me, I spent a long time not really focusing on going to the Olympics. My I just enjoyed what I was doing. I even for there was times when my performance had stagnated. I was not. Sometimes there was situations when I was not winning. Enough. Um, but I think what was very important was I stuck in there. I stuck in there when many others gave up. I
Mm-hmm.
stuck in there. You know, and this is what
Consistently.
so these 10 points, for example, of what I practiced. This is what. So for many years, for me, it was not about the Olympics. So for me, until the final 2 years, it was more about just challenging myself to be a better person, to be a better version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the motivation, and that was the push. And for my parents, as long as I was good in my academics and that was not getting majorly compromised, they were still okay for me to continue pushing myself physically. And it was only in the last couple of years and to put this in an age context, when I was 18 years old, I went through a situation where I was actually looking at going to the Asian Games, and in '98, and the goal was to make it to the Indian team, go for the Asian Games, and then quit the sport so that I could focus on my education. And as luck would have it, I didn't get selected for the Asian Games,
Oh,
even though
okay.
I personally felt that I deserved to be there. But well, that's the challenge at times. So while I felt I deserved, I wasn't chosen, and when I didn't get chosen, that triggered the fire to take it to the next level. So I said, okay, what's better than the Asian Games, and that was the Olympics. So for the first time, I said, okay, let's go to the Olympics. And um, it's not like I had many people in front of me that I could learn from or understand what that
Mm-hmm.
meant, but yes, that required a whole different change in mindset, in focus, because then it's not enough to be the best in the country. You also need to achieve a very different time standard to be able to be eligible for it, and then I had to really relook at the picture, and I think it wasn't at all easy. I mean, I must say that I crossed that line, and today I carry the tag of being an Olympian. Um, I could have very easily been on the other side of it, you know.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and but the fact that I kept my education going, and
Mm-hmm.
that always gave me the confidence and the thing that I would not. I Even if this didn't work out, it wasn't
You
like
have something to fall back
exactly,
upon.
and I had something good to fall back on. So
Right. Right. Okay. So, were you, I mean, I would say, were you motivated well? Was there, I mean, what I'm trying to ask you is, were there enough encouragement and probably from the government? Did you face any hurdles going this long?
oh, plenty. I mean, if I have to talk about the hurdles, that could be a whole segment. I mean, I occasionally do a talk on helping people understand how to manage failure. There's a ton of situations that were extremely challenging, to many different types of hurdles, right? From
Mhm.
so I mean, one is just the ignorance of the whole environment that I was in. So, for example, it requires an environment as well where people understand and appreciate what you're doing. that helps.
Right,
So,
right.
and to give you a context of a snippet from, there was when I made it to the Olympics. I remember speaking to one of my college professors, and telling them that I was chosen for the Olympics, and they said, "Oh, fantastic! You made it to the Olympics." Um, and I thought they understood what it meant till they asked me, "So, is it the whole of Karnataka that participates, or is it the whole of India?" And
Oh,
so for me, that came as a shocker, and then subsequently, when then they said, "Oh, when I said the whole world was participating, they said, 'Oh, wow.'" And then they said, "So is the Olympics in Bangalore?" And I said, "Not yet, but the one I'm going for is in Sydney." And for them, it was like, "Oh, wow." So, in the context of the environment, that was another big challenge, because people did not even understand what I was doing, what is the levels that I was pushing at and what I was, working towards. Um, and so even when I came back from the Olympics, in fact, yeah, I showed my Olympic certificate for literally 2 days, to people, because what I felt was that people did not understand what it meant. I mean, and there was a false sense of appreciation of that certificate. Even if, for example, if I had shown them that I'd won a bronze medal in tug of war, and they would have had the same appreciation to participating at the Olympics. They had no understanding. I mean, in fact, for many of them, the fact that I just participated but didn't win anything did not was not was not good enough. While winning something at a lower level was something that, so winning, it's very superficial. The
winning
environment,
was a, yeah, right.
just if you told them you won a gold medal, it doesn't matter. They can't qualitatively understand what it means. But, oh, you won a medal, it means something. You didn't win a medal, or then, just part of the crowd. So
They couldn't probably understand what took you to reach to that level, right?
correct.
What all
So,
you
so,
had to go
so the
through.
environment, and I think a lot of that has begun to change. So when you're talking about hurdles, just to give a small context, when you're talking about
Mhm.
hurdles or challenges, there are many different types of hurdles and challenges. Where,
Right.
and this what example I gave was just the environmental understanding, which was a
Right.
challenge.
All right. And so, one question from a viewer. It is especially for people from remote areas, from villages. How will they get access to good coaches? Because we have a lot of hidden talents in our villages, and rural areas. So, how do they get access to good coaches?
So I think today, compared to my, when I was competing, I think today those gaps are beginning to get bridged. Now we have to
Mm-hmm.
understand, a lot has changed in the last, I would say, 15 years. One of the key things being access to a mobile phone itself to begin with.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
that the penetration of a mobile phone has at least created access to information. That was one of the main things. Whether it was to know what schemes exist or what competitions exist, or even if you want to learn a sport, today there's some videos available on how you can even start learning some basics, even if you don't have a teacher or a coach physically present. Or even through a
Right.
mobile, you can do virtual learning, right? I mean, you can get
Mm-hmm.
live coaching, somebody sitting in a city or far away to maybe look at you through a video call and give you some tips or inputs or guidance live, on
Mm-hmm.
your technique. So I think today that gap of information and gap of distance has been significantly bridged by just the fact of the mobile phone penetration at a very, very elementary level. um, Now that is from a knowledge perspective. So today people can get information on what are the government schemes available, scholarships, um, which competitions are there, which facilities might exist in the nearby neighborhood. All of that is a basic information that today is more easily available. Now coming to physical infrastructure access, yes, there is a gap. There is a gap. That being said, the gap is again being bridged. For the scale that of challenge we have in the country, I know a lot more needs to be done at a faster pace. But
Mm-hmm.
for example, there have been government initiatives to provide basic infrastructure, basic playground spaces at a panchayat level, at a taluk level, and funds for that to facilitate those spaces, and purchase basic equipment at least to allow kids to be able to run and practice uh, fundamental skills of movement.
Mhm.
Now, when it comes to swimming, for example, often we have an elitist approach to swimming and as a sport and say that swimming can only happen in a swimming pool, and hence I need to be a member of a club or have some, access, prioritized access to a facility. But the more I've traveled across the country, I've found like even in the smallest of spaces or villages, actually there are many people and surprisingly across gender as well, both men and women engage with the water. So today we forget that India is blessed with a lot of water, as rivers, lakes, water tanks, or the sea coast for the, we have a significantly long sea
Right.
line, coastal line. So we've got access to water. Where we've been challenged is on knowing how to within those environments create safe spaces to even allow the basic learning to happen. It's like a
Mhm.
village school, right? I mean, let's go back to education, and sport is quite interlinked with education as well. So you take a government school, it will have fewer facilities compared to a an urban school which may have more facilities. But so by creating at least a clean, nice space earmarked where they can begin the basic training or access to basic skills, and then as people are showing potential, and there is then a pathway, even coming back to urban settings, right? I mean, often people assume that they need the world class competition environment in their backyards to be able to begin
Mhm.
playing sport. But again, often it's very important for many young parents to understand that, similar to education, where your primary decision when your child is very young, the primary decision is not, I mean, is not to send them to the best preschool. Well, if you have access to it in your neighborhood, that's a fantastic plus. But your main thing is that the access is important. The play school should
Mhm.
be within, say, a 5 minute distance, or a 5 to, or not more than 15 minutes, for example.
Right. Right.
It should be easily accessible by walk or by a vehicle, so that you can get your child back sooner. The minute your child is ready to go to a primary or a secondary school, then the quality of education becomes more important, and then you're okay to send the child to a school in the other side of the city, if that's what it takes, to get them a better education. And then when they're ready to go to university, you don't mind sending them to a different city within the country or abroad,
Right.
to go for specialized training. So it's about creating the pathway, so having
Mhm.
different levels of even sporting setup, meant for different um, stages of the pathway.
Mhm.
So we don't need to have like world class infrastructure in every village, but you need a basic infrastructure that allows the introduction to happen. And then when somebody shows interest and potential, you then have the next level where the child can go for the next level of development, and so on.
Right. Right. Very rightly said, sir. Thank you. Thank you so much for answering this question in detail. Thank you. And over to you are also coaching children, right? And you are also having this organization called Swimming Matters. So, could you tell us more about this organization? What do you do to encourage talents in this nation?
So to begin with, we don't coach. We don't coach,
Okay.
and or we don't teach. What we realize,
Okay.
when I was looking at the larger objective on which we are working, and the objective with which Swimming Matters, is working on, is how do we enable a billion Indians to enjoy swimming, or
Mhm.
how do we get a billion Indians to enjoy engaging with water
Okay.
safely and correctly. And then how do we enable Indians who to win Olympic gold medals in water-based sport. Those are the two objectives. One is at the bottom of the pyramid, and one is at the top end of the pyramid.
Okay.
That's all the objectives of Swimming Matters. And with those objectives or missions, we realized that me starting an academy, would be good business sense, because a lot of people in their own ignorance assume that because I went to the Olympics, I would be good at coaching, and I'll get their kid to the Olympics. but
Mm-hmm.
I was well aware of at least my limitations.
Okay.
While I was a good swimmer, I wasn't necessarily a great teacher,
Mm-hmm.
or a good coach, and those require different skills. And so what we realized was, and for the kind of scale we are aiming towards achieving, we knew that we cannot do this job alone. So we have to empower the environment. We have to enable others.
Right.
So the pathway that Swimming Mantis has chosen is, how do we activate the environment? How do we enable the environment? And how do we support other people, to help in reaching the scale we want to? So, for example, we started with training teachers. For example, we realized in the larger thing, when we did our research, we found that the quality and quantity of engagement with the water was compromised at the starting point. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we were compromised at the point where people were taught how to swim, and if
Right.
and hence, we zeroed in on the teacher playing the most critical role in being able to change the way the whole ecosystem, whether it's the social outcomes, performance outcomes, and economic outcomes, of the environment. The starting point was of a teacher, similar to a school, right? I mean, if you don't teach your ABCs correctly, you don't teach your numbers correctly, everything subsequently becomes more challenging and more difficult.
Right.
So the teacher was most important, and we decided, we've been training teachers. We started with training teachers. We're developing now, a curriculum to further support the teachers to continue teaching in a more structured manner, in a more, while at the same at all times keeping it safe and keeping it fun for the children, for the child.
Mm-hmm.
So building the whole, all the layers step by step. So the approach we took was literally, again, from an engineering perspective. We said, we have existing hardware, so we have existing swimming
Mm-hmm.
pools. How do we
Mm-hmm.
improve the outcomes, and starting with the quality of people? And then, as we developed, like any software, right? I mean, on your laptop or your phone, once your software becomes better than the hardware, then you need to start improving the quality of your hardware. You need to change your phone, upgrade your
Right.
laptop for your software to be effective. So that's when we organically got involved with, then changing paying attention to the quality of the environment or the swimming pools, because we found that itself, because they were compromised in the way they were built, they did not really lend to a good environment for the teacher or the child. So that's where we got involved in also making interventions with the hardware. So today, so Swimming Matters, was focusing on the hardware and the software. And the hardware was with an Italian company called Mertha Pools, which is the world leader for
Okay.
swimming pools. And
Mm-hmm.
as that started developing, that's when I was requested to, set up their operations in India as a wholly owned subsidiary of the company,
Okay.
and I had the business for India and South Asia. But and just to give parents a context, right? I mean, for me as a career, I think it's an interesting point I've reached, where it's an intersection of engineering, something that, and my love of swimming. So today I work at a very advanced level of engineering with the swimming pool company, and we are like at the top end of, when it comes
Wow.
to, we build the swimming pools for the Olympic Games, the World Championships, and for the top hotels around the world. Water parks, for that matter. So we are at the top end of engineering when it comes to water-based activity. And for me, this has been a lovely, it's evolved over many years, but it's a good intersection where my engineering and my love for water and the sport have come together to what I'm doing right now.
Wow. It's very nice. Somebody wants to know, where are the branches of this organization? Do you have any other branches in India?
So we are based in Bangalore,
Okay.
but we work with stakeholders across the country. So if
Mhm.
anyone is interested in any of our work, they can reach out to us. They can drop us a line, and I'll just share the last slide of,
Yes.
which has, um, our website, which is swimmingmatters.in. And they can look us up there, and drop us a line, and we'll be happy to answer their questions.
All right, lovely. So I think we have answered all the questions asked by the audience, and sir, you have taken all your time to give us a very deep insight about this entire thing. Thank you so much for your time, and it was really nice having you with us today. So,
Thank you for your
yes, do you
time,
have
and
anything else to say?
Yeah, again, thank you for this opportunity, and I hope it helped your audience.
Definitely, it did. Yes, I think there are a lot of good reviews that I'm seeing in the comments. They really like the session. Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending this webinar with us. So until next time, it's bye from Ramya. And thank you once again, Hakim sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.